not seen since Vietnam or World War II.
Right.
And then, then it was quiet again for a while, and then boom. It's been really since 2000, late 2001. This country, um, probably most folks are aware, but don't get that there's people in the service now, and I know a few, they've deployed 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, it's just incredible to think about that in the era that I started, because I retired in 2009. And there's still people today that they just keep cycling through. It's just it's incredible. It's incredible, and it's I think what's changed a lot too is if you were in the reserves back when I was in the reserves, the odds of you getting deployed were pretty minimal. They get deployed on a schedule like the active duty folks do. I mean, it's all services. It's crazy how long this has gone on,
Yep.
and it's hard to see if there's an end in sight, but it just keeps happening.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, it, I'm so glad. I mean, I'm so glad that for a long time the Army actually didn't. If you didn't, the the standard right now is obviously if you don't deploy, you're out, done, you're gone.
Right. Right.
You're no use to the Army, and I'm just glad that they started doing that. And I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago they started doing that now, and they never did that back in 2003. And because like having a combat patch on your right shoulder, is a badge of honor. It really is. I mean, it's like you're a real soldier, sort of thing. Early there wasn't that many of us back then in 2003, because the only deployment was Afghanistan, and
Right.
Obviously before Afghanistan even happened, no one really, unless they were Vietnam era or they served in the 82nd, or whatnot, that even came close to even having a combat patch. And then nowadays it's a common occurrence because everyone's deploying. But like back then, it's like you just couldn't look at someone straight. It's like so you don't have a combat patch. You obviously don't deploy, and you want in. It was like a sign of respect. It really was. I mean, it's just you. You knew what I mean. I couldn't talk to someone that didn't have a combat patch. I mean, well, I don't want to say that you couldn't talk to someone. I'm saying like you couldn't like express, hey, I went to Iraq and everything, and I saw this, and this, and this, and this, and I'm like, yeah, I never had a combat patch, and I never went. It's like, okay, did you really do anything? That's I mean, not to say that no one does anything, especially those who do supplies and all that kind of stuff. But that was the edge back then. That was the whole edge back then for the combat patch. I mean, I don't know if you guys have I don't think you guys have combat patches, right? Or like
They have ribbons. Combat action ribbons is what they'll give a sailor, if they're in combat. So they don't have
but it's
a
not
badge per se.
it's not on your actual utility uniform every day, right?
No, there's nothing. There's nothing on your BDUs.
Okay.
That would indicate that you've done anything. No.
Yeah, for sure. For the Army, it's the right shoulder. If you have a patch on there, you've been in a combat zone, and whether you take a round or not, it doesn't matter. So, but back in 2003, you did. So it was just something that we all knew, back then. Nowadays, it's like everyone has one now. So I don't know, but yeah.
Well, things have changed. I think that if you look at Desert Storm, and you were quite a pup then, but I was around, and we had Marines in our unit, and they all got deployed, and we didn't, and that's what changed me from being in cryptology to go into the boat. That we had an event, and they didn't ring the bell for me, and there was a lot of us that felt that way, and it's like, why are we here if we're not going to be utilized? Now, there's a lot of arrogance and bravado in that. Because it's not necessarily about you, and you have an important job, and maybe that job isn't necessarily doing X, Y, and Z, but it's how we felt. And we also saw the other side of the coin, where a lot of people in the reserves were getting mobilized for Desert Storm and finding any excuse they could find not to go. And even say, I didn't join the reserves to serve, and it's like, what? I mean, it was crazy. So you started to see quite the shift after that event. in making sure that people were mobilization ready. They kept their records up to date. They kept their trainings up to date. All those things. It really was a wake up call for what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq. Desert Storm, had it not happened, I think things would have taken a lot longer for things to get situated. The active duty forces were fine, but they didn't have the backup and the trained personnel in the reserves. Had it not been for Desert Storm and getting people to say, hey, this is the real deal, this can happen, and making sure that you only had people that were truly willing to deploy versus people just coming in on weekends or whatever, collecting a paycheck. And it's different. I mean, National Guard units have state jobs and things like that. So I get it. I'm just saying that it was a complete mindset turnaround after Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I think for all the right reasons. It really flushed a lot of bad, let's say, bad practices and people who really didn't want to serve. They wanted the money, but they didn't want to do the work, type of thing. So it changed a lot. It changed a lot, and I do get the mindset as to where you're coming from, Richard. I truly do. I think a lot of people understand that. I think there are people that, as crazy as it sounds, craved to finally get in the fight. And there were many people that I know that wanted to get in the fight, but they never got in the fight. I mean, it wasn't like his circumstances were circumstances, so you just never knew. Yeah, you never know. But I hear what you're saying. It's a different world today. It's a completely different world. I mean, the country's never been at war this long. Never. As we're getting on 20 years here, it's crazy. And though the casualty tolls are small compared to other major wars, the impact that it's have on the services and on its people, I don't think can adequately be described. I just don't. I mean, the suicide rates, the time away from home, what it's done to families, what it's done to, a lot in terms of where the country's at. The one good thing is that we learned from Vietnam was to at least appreciate the soldiers and the personnel that are coming back from the zones and thanking people for their service, which is something our brethren from another era didn't get. In fact, they got the opposite. So at least it's a nice thing, whether it's real or not by some folks. It doesn't really matter. At least it's there, and I think that's a key lesson learned as well.
Yeah. That's something that. That's something that my grandfather. I mean, I don't know how my other cousins and how my uncles feel about what my step grandfather did, who unfortunately passed 2 years ago. But like, I think that whenever him and I talked about, the tone of the military based from the civilian population, they were mistreated, and it was not something that they were forced into. I mean, they were all forced into it. I mean, a draft. I mean, it's just it just shows that the civilian population didn't understand what was going on, because everyone was being drafted against their will. A good portion drafted against their will, and to say that you're a baby killer and you kill people and because you love it, sort of thing. Back then, it's like it was just completely irrational for the civilian population to react that way. And I had that experience too. I never knew. I never thought that it would happen to me. I mean, it's just something that it's just, I don't know. It's kind of the reason why I kind of don't believe people when I hear thank you for your service, because I got confronted in Dulles, because I actually have, actually, funny enough, I still have the backpack right now, but I had a backpack that it's a coyote tan backpack with my last name on it, and it's got loops and everything, just like any other. But I've had it since Iraq, and sure. I've always had it. Used it for school, used it for everything. Even I use it for work, bringing in stuff in and whatnot. I use it every day. it's always been my back, my back. But that was the only thing that differentiated, besides my haircut. That was the only thing that differentiated me different from everyone else at that time. And back then, no one carried that kind of stuff. Now you see it every day. But
Sure.
like, I got approached by a group of people that basically called me a baby killer, and I got spatted on.
Really?
And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? This is 2000, and this was 2004." I was like, "This is 2004, and we're still doing this." But like, it's just, and I was coming home from being ETS. I was ETSing when it all happened, and it's just I never knew that something like that would happen to me, and it's just it's really. I guess you can. I mean, that's why I typically don't believe people when they say thank you for your service. I really don't, and mainly because of that. It's just it I don't know it.
Well, I could I could see how an incident like that could color you. I can't say I ever experienced anything like that in the '80s. But the service wasn't really considered to be a good or bad thing. It was just kind of very benign. It was that drawdown for Vietnam, the taste in your mouth, all volunteer force trying to find our footing again. And Reagan kind of changed things around quite a bit by, I think, promoting the service, thanking them, putting money back into it because everything was in really bad shape. And then after Desert Storm, I mean, they had all these parades and things, and people were celebrated. A lot of commercials, very very popular. And then when after 9/11, the country really came together for a very short amount of time, but the country really did come together. And you saw a lot of the the passing of the flag, right, from the police and firemen to the soldiers to go take them on their turf, which is exactly what happened. And then I think a complete mind shift, in the way soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen were treated when they came home. And so, I've never known anything other than, people being appreciative in the latter stages of my career. So for that to happen to you is unbelievable. I mean, there are people out there, I agree with you, that, especially a lot of folks today, with the ideological separation that there is in this country now, more so than ever before, where you really can't find the middle. There's a lot of extremes out there. But that's a damn shame. I relive very positively coming back from the second deployment and having to stop in Bangor, Maine at 4:30 in the morning, looking down, seeing all the green, right, coming back from the desert. You're like, wow, look at trees. And, you had to go through, believe it or not, you still had to go through kind of like a customs inspection coming back. And so we stopped in Bangor on our way to Chicopee, Massachusetts, to the airbase there, and we got off the plane, and it was lined up with people. I'm talking 4:35 in the morning, clapping. I mean, we were all in tears. They had made cookies, brownies, coffee. They all knew we were coming, and kids, adults, giving out coins. Everybody had cell phones on the table, telling us, when you get to that table, you just pick up a phone and you call your loved one and you tell them you're safely back in the United States of America. I mean, so, I had a very, very different, our whole unit did, our two units, IBU 22 and 21, when we came back. We were just, it was amazing. So it's really a shame. So I don't discredit people that are saying thank you for your service. I think a lot of it is genuine. You always know in a few that it's probably not, but you'll never know. Yeah. It's I still have the same haircut I had when I was in the service 10 years ago. Nothing's really changed much. People are always like, you don't get paid to wear your hair like that anymore. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's easy. Yeah. And people constantly still say, thank you for your service. And
when we actually got back from Iraq, it was probably the biggest party I've ever seen. Period. At that time. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, all the spouses. I want to say a lot of Italians were there too, and this is going back to Italy. So like actually,
Oh, I see.
but we had a really good